to see a video over.
Okay, we're live.
Hello all, welcome to the House Progressive Caucus. Senator Vyhovsky is unable to join us today because the Senate is hard at work still. We're going to start with announcements, and then we're just going to do some updates about what's going on here at the end of the session. I'm Representative Kate Logan. I am the leader of the caucus, and I represent the Chittenden 16 district, which is most of the Old North End and downtown Burlington. I think we'll go this way.
I'm Chloe Tomlinson. I represent Winooski, Chittenden 21, and I sit on House Transportation.
Brian Chena from Chittenden 15, which is most of the East District and part of the Old North End in Burlington.
Hi, I'm Esme Cole. I represent Hartford, and I sit on Human Services.
Courtney Record, House Clerk's Office. Lisa Gerlach with AFT Vermont.
Carter User with AFT Vermont.
Okay, thanks everybody. Well, you have an exciting announcement.
I'll give two healthcare announcements.
And
One,
and the Senate announcement about your bill.
yeah, that was gonna be one of them. So one of them is H814, which was an act relating to neurological rights and artificial intelligence in health and human services. It passed on second reading in the Senate today. So and the Senate committee didn't change the bill at all, which is unusual. So they kept it the same. So that means that they're proposing that they concur with the House, and so it passed second reading. So if it passes tomorrow, then it goes right to the governor. So that's cool.
Were there any no votes?
There was allegedly one or two, and we don't know exactly why. There were some questions about the wording of things, but it didn't sound like it didn't sound like a strong objection. And in the House on second reading there were some no's, and on the third there wasn't. So I don't know. Sometimes people just say no and then they figure it out. You know, they realize. So who knows what's going to happen? But it is nice that it may be passing out of the Senate tomorrow. And it's one less thing to. That I mean, at that point, it's like, hopefully the governor is reasonable. But then the second announcement is that we had a public hearing on primary care, and there was a lot of engagement of providers and unions and strong advocacy for universal health care. And that combined with testimony from many witnesses indicating that in the face of the collapse of the healthcare system, we're gonna have to rethink everything. The committee is going to be looking at language to add to S-197 that might, I don't know what's going to be in it yet, but it might ask for a plan to be developed for us to approve next year to transition to a system that has a universal primary care. So that it would be a big deal if we get that plan in, because the closest we've gotten to this was my first 2 years. The Senate passed the universal primary care bill, and then the House, then the Senate Money Committees weakened it, and then the House Healthcare Committee restored it, and then it died in appropriations in the House. So to have a plan, a plan for publicly financed primary care would be a really big deal. I don't know if we're gonna get that in there. I'm hoping, but it may be something a little weaker than that, but honestly, anything that takes a step in that direction would be better than where we're at. So that's my healthcare announcements. I don't want to take up too much space. Those are the two most exciting things for me right now. There are many other things. I'm sure every time I make any kind of update, I get emails from people saying, "Why didn't you mention, this thing I care about?" And they're not the only two things I care about. But there's limited time. So next.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, on Human Services, one thing we spent a lot of time working on last week was the forensic facility.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Is that dying?
No.
Okay.
It is not dying. And so there are 4 committees that have or are having testimony on this. And I think the one that will actually pass it out is likely going to be corrections and institutions again. So what we're doing as our committee is sending a list of recommendations basically as to how they should structure the bill. I felt really good about our committee conversations, and I recommend if anyone is really interested in this bill to watch House Human Services deliberations. We had really good witnesses and good conversations, and I think actually we were pretty unanimous in our feelings surrounding the bill, which was don't DOC is not able to do this, basically what they're.
Does their committee know the forensic facilities bills? Okay, good.
So people, who were deemed not fit or competent to stand trial basically would be held in, DOC as they are right now. But this would give them a little bit more say in, keeping them there and with the intention of restoring competency. But it's very fascinating because in the definitions language, they included folks with developmental disabilities in there. And so, or people with traumatic brain injuries, and so at the House Committee on Human Services, we're like, are you kidding me? Folks may not have even been able to stand trial in the first place, given what it takes to stand trial, which is really hard for anyone, basically. And so what would happen with folks who would, things aren't meant to change, basically, you can't change a person to who never, had that ability in the first place. So we're deeply concerned there, and we are going to try to put the leadership around this more under the duties of AHS, and I know DOC is within HS, but under other realms such as the Department of Health. The Department of Health is for mental health, and they have pushed back as to not wanting to take on that responsibility, which seems pretty radical to me, given that this would be absolutely their jurisdiction. So anyway, so that's something that's happening there, and we'll see what the final language of our recommendation looks like, but I welcome people to watch, and provided that many other things we're working on, trying to think of a few, opioid settlement funds and 668.
That's not resolved yet?
It's complicated. I think we're going to a committee of conference on 660 maybe. Maybe I'm not the best person to ask, but the other bill, there are two pieces of legislation moving, one being 660 and the other one being the other one we took up in committee that Eric McGuire had sort of the leadership role in. And there are still disagreements about what should be paid for by like pension funds versus other settlement funds. So more on that this week, basically.
Is there a chance?
So that's happening in the Senate?
There's a disagreement with
Between the House and the Senate?
Yeah, basically.
Do you know what the Senate disagrees with? Or should we just,
I think
or
let's,
who should I check in with? to find out more?
I think Teresa would be a great person.
Okay.
There are also plenty of lobbyists working on the issue, so, but it's also a little bit complicated because there are two moving parts here. There's another moving part with, I won't get into that, but that one is a little bit complicated, but just keep an eye out, I suppose, if you're curious about opioid settlement funds and prevention funds as well, which I think we could be doing much better with how we allocate our prevention funds. And that's something I'd like to work on. We're also working on a tobacco bill, but vaping, e-cigarettes, that kind of thing, and I'm gonna pass out a bill this week on that to further restrict the way things are being marketed to children. So I feel good about that. Another good news, 657, which was the bill to exactly, yeah, unaccompanied homeless youth and basically their rights if you are not in DCF custody. And we talked about like social security funds, who gets to keep those. And thank God, I think thanks to a lot of good conversations behind the scenes that were happening, that's a huge win.
It is a huge
It was
win.
strengthened a little bit.
A little bit,
It
yeah.
was like actually some even stronger.
Yeah.
Kate was telling me.
Yeah, oh man,
I can't remember the details.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to rack my brain from last week, but it was, because we haven't reviewed the result as a committee yet,
Yeah.
but it's gonna come back to you.
But at the very least, the administration wasn't successful in getting the social security benefits piece stripped out. So that means that foster children are now gonna have their social security benefits.
Absolutely, their parents.
It be vetoed. Does anybody have any ideas about whether or not?
I think that's an
they're gonna
excellent
do it?
question.
We should ask
We
Kate
definitely-
Bailey.
Yeah,
Like what their plans are to prevent that.
I have a quick question about the opioid settlement fund, and then we should probably move on because it's up 12:20 already.
yeah.
if it's going to conference committee, are you feeling like the dynamic is there's people fighting over their turf already and that's what it's gonna be about? Or do you think there's a chance to throw in some last minute wild card thing like ibogaine clinical trials?
No, unfortunately, yeah, I think it's.
It's a good idea.
You know,
I
sure,
know, it
though.
would be a good time to do it, because Trump just signed the executive order, we
Yeah.
the 14th state to join the consortium just in time.
Well, I mean,
$300,000 is all we have to put in.
we do have free will and we can talk to the people about it, but one thing that came up during our committee deliberations was a little bit of, I guess, frustration with the fact that the safe injection site didn't go through the application process.
I mean, they didn't ask for the money,
Yeah,
but they're getting it anyway.
well, they already.
If they are, then I'm going for ibogaine, because if we're gonna let people shoot up in
They
public,
already
at
did.
least offer them ibogaine.
The confusion was that we did a specific bill dedicated solely
Yeah.
to the fact that a safe injection site was going to come online. And so I think maybe they were confused about needing to go through the secondary process of seeking out, an application for the funds. So anyway, but the result of this tension was that it is our committee's preference that everyone go through the same process regardless. So that's why I would say that they would need to, any new project would need to go through that.
I think that
process.
that's what it should be, actually. Now,
Yeah.
our plan is, I learned this, so our plan next year is to go to the OSAC and make our pitch.
Yeah.
So, okay, anyway, I just wanted to know, because if you were like, oh, everything's up in the air, then I would be like, let's
No.
focus on that, but I actually think, I prefer goes through the regular process.
Yeah.
So I think that's helpful to know.
Yeah, but you're welcome to talk about it with, members.
Well, I will, I think I'm gonna say to them, there's this thing, but we're gonna wait
Yeah,
for the process, so heads up.
I think Chip is gonna be on the committee of conference with that one.
It's 12.
Oh, okay, some transportation updates, House Transportation is focused on the DMV bill right now. It's, not, pretty limited in scope, but one thing that I've been focusing on is, getting in some kind of very baseline consumer protections related to towing and abandoned vehicles. So it looks like we're gonna be able to get a couple kind of tow-in pieces around that, and with the hope that that's an area we can continue working on, because Vermont is like in the lowest 5 states in terms of like towing. Which is like kind of a niche issue,
The
but
lowest in protections that we said.
yeah, it's like, it's kind of like the Wild West.
Yeah, it's predatory, it's full
Yeah,
on
it's
predatory.
a little concerning. So anyway, we're just working on a little bit there, and we're just trying to make sure that gets through. We're also looking at inspections and revising inspection standards to be kind of more focused on core safety issues and avoid some of the, abundant cases where folks are getting failed for things that aren't like absolutely essential for safety. The main debate right now is between when the DMV's new proposed standards go into effect. If they go into effect under emergency rules, or if they wait for the rulemaking process to delay them by about 6 months. So it's kind of an interesting conversation. If folks have thoughts on emergency rules versus not, let me know.
Are these easing restrictions that are financial burdens for working people?
Yeah, like
We should consider that an emergency right now, actually.
Well, yeah, that's my argument.
Yeah.
And position, yeah.
I would support emergency
Yeah,
rules.
because the economy's not gonna, we're on a bad track, it's only gonna get worse.
I know, I think one of the concerns with it is that, it's possible, like, the DMV's proposal, like, really doesn't go far enough in terms of, paring back, what's included in the inspections and just the complexity of inspections, but through the rulemaking process, the public can weigh in, and I actually think the emergency rulemaking process seems like an interesting opportunity, because basically the new rules will be in effect while people are weighing in on them. So it gives people a chance to really understand it better and then respond to it. Because I feel like a lot of times people respond to things once they're actually impacting their lives, and then we don't get the people really engaged in the process if it's like theoretical. So I think it's actually like an interesting,
Actually, that's 325.
Okay, I have a couple more things, though. I just want to note on the Senate side, they've made a lot of changes to the T-bill, so it's going to be a pretty substantial conference committee, and there is one important thing that the Senate added that I'm going to be advocating that they keep, which is a max fee for the mileage-based user fee, which I think is like a good kind of fail-safe for affordability issues for EV drivers with the new IMBUF. So that's a good step. And then there's a few other things from other committees. I guess the highest priority that I wanted to flag to this group is that I spoke to members of the Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee after the floor report for S202 today. I noticed that they added in some language that I feel is quite restrictive around tenants being able to use plug-in solar. The Senate did not include it and they added it, and it's a pretty broad language that gives landlords the ability to just decline tenants' use of plug-in solar.
I think there are other stipulations, it's that simple,
Yeah.
okay.
So I spoke with them and they, anyway, there's some different background, but I think that, my sense is it would be best for us, or what I intend to do is talk with, Senator Watson, because they're anticipating that the Senate will do a further proposal of amendment, and that they were gonna look more closely at that, and they had concerns about spending too much more time on it on the House side. So I don't intend to try to do anything on the House side right now, although folks will talk more about it after meeting, I'm happy to, but plan to engage with Senator Watson. I think Big Bird's also concerned about it. I didn't hear about it through them, but I think they've been on it. So, that's just one flag for today.
Okay, the main thing right now is that we'll start tomorrow, the floor debate on S325, that's the bill on Act 181 that, we've been talking about since the beginning of the session, related to, Tier 3 and the road rule. So there were a number of other things that happened in that bill, but particularly where Tier 3 and the road rule are concerned, where we ended up in my committee was that we're repealing those two rulemaking processes that were instituted. It was just like a rulemaking process that was instituted in Act 181, not an actual policy, but the way that the Land Use Review Board rolled out the community engagement process for rulemaking was completely botched. In particular, the person who I think caused the most harmful impacts was somebody who had been appointed by Governor Scott onto the Land Use Review Board. His name is Alexander, I'm blanking on his last name right now, but it's basically, he took like an ArcGIS, he doesn't have a background in ArcGIS, he got himself an ArcGIS software subscription and made some maps and published them as a worst case scenario as the opening step of community engagement on Act 181, which is just absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It caused a lot of harm, it got a lot of people upset. So we were really kind of in a position where it's too late, could not have a good conversation about these, rulemaking process could not proceed in a good way. So we just repealed them. Let them know right before the next meeting that they were about to have on Tier 3 rulemaking that they should stop talking to the public about it. So instead, we were replacing that with the next step is a planning process. So Vermont Council on Rural Development and the Vermont Conservation Districts are required to come back next January with a community engagement plan around like the general policy goals that we were trying to achieve with Tier 3 and the road rule, and then the legislature will authorize the community engagement process and fund it. So that's S325. I'm generally supportive. It passed. In fact, I think it went really well. I think the committee conversation went really well. Republicans came in really hot, assuming that we were gonna just like plant our flag and try to defend Tier 3 in the road rule. And I'm like, it's not even about what those things actually were anymore, because the perception of what they are is what they are. It's just super gone.
What was the vote? Like, was it
Unanimous.
okay? Do you expect it's gonna be like hot on the floor? Or?
I don't think so.
Unless people are trying to repeal it altogether, like I've heard there's continued.
Yeah, no, the call for an Act 181 repeal is so ludicrous, because what's left in Act 181, for the most part, is a bunch of stuff that Governor Scott wants. How soon will you be back, Brian? Because we're
Like
done.
5 or 10 minutes. I can't wait.
Okay. But yeah, so Act 181, a lot of what's in the rest of that bill is actually stuff the government Scott wants. Governor Scott wants. I mean,
where we are living.
that is accurate. That Governor Scott wants, and I just don't think that people know what's in it. You know, like we're like,
Can you say that on the Facebook group?
it's 140. No, I'm not in the Facebook group.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's promoted.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I haven't even looked at it yet. But it doesn't matter what I say in the Facebook group.
I know that.
People believe whatever they are going to believe, and they're being encouraged by Republicans to do that.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, Act 181 has a bunch of stuff in it that's like, it extended the exemptions to Act 250 for building housing projects all over Vermont. Okay, we can repeal Act 181, great,
Oh dear.
let's do it. Yeah, like, fuck your housing projects, like, I don't, and then the other thing, like another thing that's in Act 181 is this like 15-year-long process of revising all of our community investment programs, like designated town centers, designated villages, designated growth areas, all of these different things that are linked to incentives, particularly for rural economic development, and they want to repeal those. Like, I don't think people know what that means. I don't think they know what they're talking about. And they're being encouraged, like, it isn't anything that impacts me and my constituents, actually, none of it. So sure, let's repeal it.
Do you have a short, I don't know, synopsis of the beneficial things that of what's left?
I think that's like a Vermont Natural Resources Council
they had like a
question.
long.
It was a 140-page bill.
Of course.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything short. And like I said, it doesn't actually impact my constituents.
Yeah.
Because it's all programs that benefit rural communities.
Yeah.
And like, the way that I feel about Act 250 and Act 181 right now. And the other piece is, well, I mean, I guess it would impact us in the sense that Burlington would continue to have to file for Act 250 permits for certain kinds of housing projects.
Yep.
Instead of having that sort of delegation process happen. But like, what I would like to see people messaging on this outside of places like Burlington is that I would like to remind them, Burlington, we are taxing ourselves. We pay more in taxes so that we can have a gigantic professional staff who are more than capable of administering development permits for our own city. So we're paying more in taxes, and then we also pay state taxes to help pay for the Act 250 system so that municipalities that pay 0 taxes for city government or municipal government can have the state regulate development in their community.
Yeah.
And so it is a service that the state, Act 250 is a service that the state provides to rural communities that don't have bylaws, that don't have ordinances, that don't have paid city staff to monitor their own development. Like, if you want like Burlington developers to continue to have to clog the system with their Act 250 development permit applications, great, we can continue to do that. It means everything's gonna cost more, and rural communities are gonna get less services from the state. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not gonna get into the arguments though.
For sure.
Online.
That's helpful. Oh, well, no,
Yeah.
no. And that was a partial joke, but it's also like speaking to the bigger lack of understanding. Do you know where VLCT stands on this at this point?
They support
the way it is, just repealing 2 and 3 or tiers.
Yeah, they never supported repealing Act 181.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
But they did support the repealing of the tiers, or no?
No.
Okay, so they never were.
Yeah.
I only bring this up because I saw someone testifying about making it look bad, basically, from VLCT, so that's why I was wondering.
Well, they support repealing tier 3.
Oh, so, okay, tier 3 is the only thing, yeah.
Yeah, because like if without tier 3, no, and they don't support repealing tier 1A and tier 1B.
Yeah, they wanna keep those.
They want to keep those.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
just curious, because that's,
Yeah, no,
Okay.
because, I mean, I think tier 1A and tier 1B are bad names. Because like a lot of people keep talking about it as if it makes, like tier 1A, as if it makes Burlington exempt from Act 250, and that's where I say, no, we pay more in taxes. We have like a bunch of staff who can do as good a job or better than the Act 250 regional committee can on, regulating our own development. And we have to like show that we have those standards in place in order to get that.
yeah.
And so it's not exactly exemption from Act 250, because it means that we have standards that are as high or higher than Act 250.
Absolutely.
Tier 1B is actually Act 250 exempt. Like certain projects are actually Act 250 exempt, and because those towns don't have bylaws or the ability to regulate development in the way that tier 1A does. So we really are relaxing Act 250 standards for rural downtowns, rural villages, things like that. And then tier 2 is just the rest of the state.
Yeah.
Which is rural development. Yeah. Where you can still build a house without getting an Act 250 permit. Like you can build up to 9 houses without that. So anyway, it's been a good conversation. I feel like we got to a really good place. We went a lot further than the Senate did in S325, and I think it's gonna calm down the political fires for folks who are in rural districts. But I do think that rural Democrats are gonna have to campaign in order to educate people.
Yeah, that was my next question or point, and I don't know if now's the appropriate time, but like, I think, that's the number one question that's gonna be asked by especially the conservative people who are obsessed with this Facebook group, I tell you.
Yeah.
Which is, like, do you support the full repeal of 181?
Yeah.
And so we need to have an excellent response.
Yeah, and that's
And I know for some
Democrats'
people,
problem.
is it though? Like, cause I want progressive candidates to be able to have a good response.
We don't have to.
Well, because there's no rural progressive candidates. Well,
So far.
well, maybe there's a chance, and I do think it still would be good to be equipped. I don't know.
Sure.
And I can, with the D in my name, I can help. But I just think it's like so important for the debate stage, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of damage has already been done
Of course,
by
yeah.
like really high level Democratic candidates this year.
Oh,
they're talking about Act 181.
And a lot of other things. But I think the way you opened it up, saying like, government, or I call them government Scott again. That he wants this 181 because, it's, like, that is huge.
I don't know
To
why
put out
he
in front.
wouldn't say that.
Well, I know why he wouldn't say it,
Yeah,
it's because
yeah,
it's so
politically
misleading.
it's
And so I
politically
think in any
advantageous to-
opening statement about this, that is what you start with.
Yeah, we'll be sending out an email about
Sure.
S325.
Yeah.
After it's fully passed and signed into law and everything like that.
Yeah.
But Democrats need to up their campaign
Yeah,
skills.
let's say it's not a Democrat issue, it's not a progressive issue, like of course, like we care and are interested in this policy, but like this is what the Scott administration is asking for, basically. So I think we need to put that out there.
I think it would be a better idea in order to talk about him personally.
I agree too, but
Yeah.
there are still government Scott lovers.
Yeah. Well, but I do think that
Who we could sway.
but there will be candidates for governor.
Who needs to say this as well?
Messaging about
Should we be doing political message, like campaign messaging strategy right now?
I'm
No,
I'm
this-
really
no.
sorry, this is so
I think we
horrible
should
thing
stay
to
focused
talk
on
about.
legislative policy and then end the meeting.
I'm really sorry, I think I should be, escorted out of this meeting.
Anyway, but that's the primary update I have is where we ended up on S3. Does anybody have
I'm
any
so
questions?
sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I have some concerns about it, but I don't wanna talk about it now, because we can talk about it later, because we don't need to give space now.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, then we are adjourning the caucus.